Hello and welcome back to Gearrock Farms. If you haven't already, check out our last video where my father talked about how he built this farm shop of his, and he goes in depth on the construction side of things and how this building came to be. But this video is going to be about his shop setup and how he sets up his tools and goes about organizing things. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.
Okay, so we'll talk about the tools and kind of how we laid stuff out for handiness. So our welder, I even got an arc welder, but we finally updated to a nice wire feed. But again, plugged in very close to our power source, next to our door. So in certain cases, we can wheel it partway outside, do our welding outside. So you got all that hot metal and all that exhaust from the welding near the door or outside the door. This vise, this was another huge part of something because this is out of some old combine or something. It's all scrap iron. We got a frame from an old truck, and I pretty much tried to pick up one of the better vices I could where it's actually got ball bearings in, because again, this is one tool. This area right here is our main fix-it area, and then it's got a lot of holes that were naturally in here that I can put tools down in and keep them from falling off, and almost kind of made itself work even better. But you see a lot of vices that are down lower like this, or maybe they're on a bench up against the wall. You don't have much room to work. So I thought, well, I didn't want it too far out into the shop. I didn't want it to interfere with any equipment getting in and out. But I welded this up, dug it down into the dirt before they poured the concrete. So this stand and everything was in here already as soon as the concrete got poured. But I wanted it at a height like this. And I'm like sharpening chainsaws and stuff, you're more at a natural spot. We do have other vices in here, but again, to have something you're not bent over. Then you have like a small tool space area, you can set things. And it doesn't have to be huge, as long as you keep it reasonably clean, it's enough. So then the trouble with this Quonset is now all the walls are sloped. So it's hard to put shelving on, it's hard to get, and I had a lot of thought to figure out, how am I gonna do this? How are we gonna put, so my theory is this is just gonna be shelving to store hardware on, tools on. It's not gonna be the workspace area. Because I didn't want to work in a corner underneath stuff where it's a little darker. I wanted to work out in the open. We have this huge table. I found this in an auction where I had to kind of fix it up a little more. Part of it was already there with the wheels on it. And it's able to be rolled. I put a vise on the corner. And then depending on what you're doing, if you need a more sturdy vise, we use that one. But this one here, I'm able to roll it out into the middle of the floor, get it near the machine, you get all your tools laid on, and it's all iron. So if something's hot, we can work on that, and we can lay it up on there. You don't have to worry about something catching fire like a wood bench or something. Cleans up great. So we can do a lot of grinding or whatever. It's very sturdy. So that's just a torque screw, and it's been consistently added. And then I got what I call my main set of wrenches. These wrenches I've had for almost 40 years, since I was a pretty young man. My parents bought me this. And then sizes like the 1 1/8, you got your 15/16, you have your 3/4, and we all know it. Those are the ones you use all the time. So just put a longer screw in so they can hold more of them. But everything goes back where it always was. So when I have somebody working here with me, I don't have to explain very, very hard where everything is. And then at the end of every day, no matter how late it is, we come back to put everything back in its place. And it sure makes it a lot easier. When you got a bad day and a lot of things going wrong, we're able to find everything we need and try to help ourselves and correct our problems as we go. And then in the evening, at the end of the day, get everything back in its place. So the next day starts fresh again, where everything is where it belongs. Because there's nothing worse than spending more time looking for your tools than you're actually fixing. These bolt bends, now there's bolts and washers, and you can kind of come on right on down through here. Every size screw and anything we normally would use here, I don't know if these come out of some store or some place that was really some type of, we ended up getting these that we're going to throw them in a dumpster. And I ended up getting like over 100 of them. And I thought they're going to work perfect. And some of them are bigger, some are smaller, but they're just the perfect tray to go through and sort all your hardware to a certain degree. And so when we're looking for something, we can find it instantly. And then underneath, bigger tools. Got my jumping cables, my bead breaker, my bottle jacks, my chop saw, some of the larger hardware stuff, tie strap stuff. And another thing I do is, this is something that was built when we were kids. We used to build these in woods class. I keep this one box empty. So like if I gotta go fix a drinking cup up in the barn, and I already know what I need, grab a couple pipe wrenches, a vice grip, a hacksaw, you know, and you throw that all in here, and then when you're up there working, you can keep putting your tools back in your box. They don't get lost in the feed or the hay or the dirt, and it's always kind of an easier way. And when we get a bigger project, we might even use the wheelbarrow and just throw everything in there and then go up and use it and then bring it all back. So like then over here, so this is kind of more my, we got our chargers here and stuff. It's all near the door, so we're able to retrieve things a lot quicker, and our chargers and stuff too, so that we don't like to keep our batteries on the charger only until they're actually charged. So the last thing in the day before you leave, you're able to either unplug or all my angle grinder tools too. They're out here where I can see them. I never liked cabinets and drawers. To me, cabinets and drawers are more for sensitive stuff like funnels, things you don't want to see dust get into, sensitive stuff you don't want mice to get at the wiring or something. It's always hard finding stuff. You end up opening up a dozen drawers before you find what you need. So then up here, some of the finer, lighter things like for instance, we got O-rings, different snap keys, and all that type of stuff is on the upper shelf. And it's a little bit lighter, but it's out here where we can see. And then over here, this was another thing that we ended up, I think it was like these containers. I think they used to be like breadsticks or something. My wife used to buy these in, and I really liked them. And the best part is I can stick my whole hand in here, even with a glove on, and you can see what's in there. No labels required or anything. And so we go on down the line, like here I got all my air compressor fittings. We got tie strap stuff, different size clamps, some odds and ends springs, and chain connectors, snappers like we're in the barn or wherever on the farm. And then this pail here, this one, I don't know why, but this is one. There's all kinds of spacer stuff, and this is all just from old bearings. You wouldn't believe how much metal fabrication comes out of this little container here. You can find it without necessarily dumping it all. But simple, and you don't necessarily have to have those. I mean, any container works. I mean, we were down at our recycling center, and they had these large containers down there, and they were huge. Again, I grabbed a few of them. They were just going to go for recycling, and we're using them in the shop here. The air compressor, I had just one on wheels. I had a pretty good one on wheels. One of the best ones the farm stores sold anyway at that time. And I just hooked it into this main line. And we updated to this here a bunch of years back. So far, so good. It's quite a few years on this one. It's awful noisy in here. If you could possibly have it somewhere else so you don't have to have it rattling at you, it's always a plus. But what we did here, we used black pipe. And this pipe goes from one end of the building to the other. And it goes out the front wall and attaches to a hose reel. And there's many different styles of this you'd get. And there's a ball valve up here. Okay? And then we'll come out here, for instance, with our wand. And this thing we are using very religiously to blow off our dusty machinery many times, either before we work on it or before we put it away. And there's one of these on, it's exact same setup on the other end. And this is just a half barrel cut, just to give it a little protection from the sun and the weather, a little bit to keep this hose preserved, because the sun will kind of raise havoc on this rubber. Well, like my paper towel rolls, you know, and these are all afterthoughts. So we got a main air line going down through. And I have these valves. You get condensation. Any airline, you got to have a place to let the water out. Otherwise, eventually you get rust inside there and stuff. But I've got several of these down through. And then again, where I can add on some sort of air device if I want to. But then for the paper towel holders, again, I thought instead of making another bracket, I thought, well, I'm just gonna do a little plumbing. We have our own thread cutter and everything. It was easy enough to do. And I got two of them here, where we put our standard shop towels over them. And then over here, the only difference with this one is I found this little plastic cover thing that I ended up kind of cutting and fitting over that. I thought maybe it might be better for the towel to spin on it, but it's so many simple things a person can do that really don't cost anything or even take that much time. This is kind of a Menards deal, and it's the first decent one I've ever had. And you got a top section and a bottom, but we keep kind of all our main stuff in here. I mean, the bigger drawers will hold your big clamps and some of the bigger tools and my large socket sets and different things like that. Hacksaws, hammers, socket stuff, and then I always like these big decors. My big bars and my huge stuff, you know, kind of thing. But it isn't really the sturdiest cabinet, but it still keeps us organized. All my plier stuff, all my punch stuff, whatever fits in here. The big punch stuff ends up in the big drawer, but still. You get the picture. My drill bit stuff, and then the top drawer is my metric wrenches and sockets, and I've been getting more of them lately with this world changing in front of us. We're adding more to it, but anyway, it's just generally how we do it. We got our screwdrivers on this side, different sizes, and my 3/4 inch impact, my 1/2 inch impact, and all their sockets. Change filters every which size. It seems like we started off with this size, and now as the equipment keeps changing, we're ending up with more than fits in the drawer. But again, you know, some special bolts and keys, my vice grips. It's just doesn't really matter how you do it. You do it so you can find it. I think the key to success is being organized. It took a long time to realize that that's really what it is. It's we're not spending a lot of time looking for things. And once you got this set up and you get religious about keeping it that way, you love farming. I mean, I've had guys, they just hate it because it's so frustrating and things are going wrong. And believe me, on this farm, stuff goes wrong. But we're able to correct those things a lot easier being organized, and the day ends a little bit nicer. So now this is on the opposite side of the front end. And again, there's all the grinding, the welding, the kind of the things that are going on over there. So over here I decided we're gonna put all our flammable stuff on this side. So I got all my oil barrels here. My hydraulic fluid, the 1030, the 1540, and then my teat dips that I use in the barn, my preservatives, and sometimes our baling twine and our chemicals or whatever's going on in the season. I got a couple old pallets here, sometimes our seed. All that more sensitive stuff stays over here. And then this is really the only cabinet I have in this building. And this is something we retrieved out of an old house that was getting tore down anyhow. But I keep all my control panels for any of my machinery, where there's a lot of wiring, and I keep that in here, and some inner tubes. And then here, I keep all my funnels. I used to work for a guy a short time when I was a teenager, and he kept his funnels in a cabinet because dust likes to stick to oil. And then you're putting it inside your equipment every year, so they're always kind of clean, unless, there's always a little oil left in the containers anyway. So that's inside there, my measure containers and stuff. The bottom section here, another big oil measure container, and then filters. I don't know, I'd have to figure it out someday. We could go through almost 100 filters between all our equipment in a year's time. But anyway, we try to keep a pretty good amount of that stuff on hand. So when we see we need to change, we have it. The other thing is shelving. I like this. And this was the first bay of shelving I put up, and on this Quonset, there was only two straight walls on each side of the doors. So I started on the bottom so I could put larger stuff, like either 5-gallon buckets full of stuff underneath. And we kind of kept the heavy stuff at the bottom and the lighter stuff on the top. So we got a couple shelves for electrical, but then down here, like all our gas containers, flammable again, our grease. We got 2 heavy electric conveyor motors here that we use only during certain times of the year that are, you know, at eye level where we can find them. I got some grease rag stuff, some old t-shirts, and maybe some different stuff you can use when you're doing some painting or whatever. So, but the neat thing about it is you can back up and take a quick look and see, okay, where is whatever, and I can see it all. So now over here, I keep my ladders close by. So if I want to get up on any of these shelves in this building, just grab a ladder. I mean, I thought of building one into it. I mean, I find myself a lot of times climbing this. Maybe if I only have to go up part way, I can climb up part way and grab whatever. So a lot of times I got all these containers up on a shelf like this. I can't see what's in them. We could label them, but then it might not be turned the right way. And so what I try to do, for instance, I was going to have this box of these clips in this container. I'd always leave it stick out enough, like this has got extra breakers in, so you could see, you know, like we have maybe a pail in the back there where we have our chains for the skid steer in, and it's up a little higher, and I'll leave one piece of that chain hang onto that pail or whatever it is, so that it just illustrates what's in there without even writing anything on it. This little drain we put here, there's just a 55-gallon drum below that, and there's a sand base in it, and that's just for our hand wash sink, where we might want to come here with some smaller item and rinse it off quick or something. That at least we can initially get rid of the water without making too much of a mess in the shop. This is an old wash sink, nothing special. Copper lines I done up myself. This is a mirror off of a 1974 Chevy truck, and I just thought it has the perfect place for it. Instead of I don't have the truck anymore, so I still got use for the mirror. This is where you might find me at the end of some days. I might even have a cold delicious with me. It's kind of a place where I come and I do any of my crop notes. And there's oodles of folders and stuff in here, and it almost can look like a rat's nest, but to me it's very organized. I have all my owner's manuals for all my equipment, and the drawer ain't big enough anymore. We're starting to get into other places, but the best part, it's mouse proof, as long as the door's shut, or the drawer's shut. So, because God knows in a shop, it don't matter how nice you keep it, they find their way into it. And every farm's got an office. I guess you could call this my office for the farm. But again, it can be more elaborate, and I just like the fact that it's a good steel cabinet to keep things, sensitive stuff, secure. And then the same thing on this end. All our hardware is in these little bins. We try to keep things somewhat organized, keep all our screw stuff and our lag bolts and small nails and everything somewhat organized so we can find it. I mean, I put these hooks in up here to hang different things so that we can keep them out of the other tools damaging them from laying on top of them. But then back here, another hose reel. Now this pipe, this black pipe that I talked about, I think that comes in 10-foot lengths. And we put a T in, and a lot of places I just put a plug in, but I thought, well, if I want to hook some device in there that would need air, I could anywhere I wanted. So back here, put another hose reel on, a little smaller, simpler version of one. Nice big ball valve again. Got my spray gun. It never seems like you can't seem to buy good ones anymore. But anyway, so there's 2 of them inside the shop, and then there's one on the outside of each end. And this is the key to keeping your stuff clean. Blowing dust out of whatever, and it doesn't matter what it is, of course, but even just to clean up the shop, to blow the dust off all your shelvings and everything. And then back here too, that's all my, my circular saw sanders, my Sawzall, more of the woodworking type stuff. They're all up here where I can see them. And then the bigger tools are under the bench. Okay, so we have this really heavy tool chest, and You know, as things go on, we always try to better ourselves. And we found these on a farm show too, a bunch of years back. Store Lock. You can look them up. They're heavy. They sold it to me when they opened the door, and it was a pretty big man, probably twice as big as me. He opened the door up like that, and he climbed in there, and he did this. And it didn't bend or break or twist or nothing. I was sold on it. They're heavy. And they got all different sizes. They can fit your whole shop. But you can have this drawer configuration any way you want. You could have the long one on the bottom. You could have all small ones. You could have big ones mixed with small ones to fit what you think you want to put in there. That's kind of a neat thing. I love the fact that we could diversify the whole thing, and you could just pick out the size cabinet you wanted, and they had all sorts of configurations. And it's one of those cupboards that I don't believe is going to start falling apart. And then the top stainless steel, I think they got like maple or something, and it makes it real nice. And then we didn't have to get the wheels, but I wanted to get the wheels because we had to move it away to clean behind it or whatever. You could get them just on the floor or mounted down too. But these fire extinguishers, for instance. My brother had a barn fire here a bunch of years back, and that gets the guy really starting to think. Well, I don't want to be a salesman here, but it's cheaper than having a disaster. I'm more of a preventative guy. But anyway, we bought I think we got like 7 or 8 of these stationed throughout this farm. And I've got 2 of them in the shop, some of them in my equipment. And you're not going to have time to think if you ever need that. You hope you never use them. On this back wall, same type of shelf. All my plumbing for the barn. Our barn is still all in galvanized yet. There's probably better stuff than that today, but again, all my drinking cup stuff. I always like to keep a couple of them on hand. And you got a pail full of your valves. I mean, you kind of get the picture here. We got this little display here that we had put together when we had a graduation party here a couple years back, and we didn't take it apart. It actually looks too nice to undo. This is the other corner. There's another back corner. This would be more where my machine parts are, used parts, some newer parts. These are just old drawers out of some cabinet that was not so good anymore. I got some old and some new baler needles here, and the baler parts, the bearing, got pails full of bearings that I use that were replaced and maybe still good enough to get by on if we had to. And then my electric fence area, a lot of my fencing stuff, staples, so that's got its own spot. And again, the higher up you get, the less used the stuff gets. There's some motors up there we may need and we may never need. We just don't know. And then here I got my belts. And at first, you think, okay, an old belt, replace it, throw the old one away, it's cracked, right? But like this one is for my feed mixer, and this will grind corn. Heck, this could maybe go 10 years yet, or it could go 1 day, who knows? We replaced it. I always keep it, because if it breaks, it's only seconds to replace it. I know I have it, I can just come up here and fish it out of this stack. And the theory is, and I know this is a fact, that probably 80% of what's on these shelves will never get used. It's probably literally junk, but that one part could save quite a mess of a day.
All right, so that is it for my father's shop setup and the way he lays out his tools. We wanted to thank you guys for watching the videos. If you haven't seen the last video about how the shop was constructed, make sure to check that out if you're at all interested. We want to remind you guys that if you enjoy the videos, share them with someone you think that might enjoy them as well. It really means a lot to us. But that's going to be it. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time.